bring us down for us shorter people. So they make my life very difficult here. Again, my name is Jim Stoker. I'm with Firearms Owners Against Crime Institute, FOAC. Some of you might not have heard of us. We wrote Castle Doctrine for Pennsylvania. The Bill Peduto AR-15 ban in the city of Pittsburgh. It was our group that stopped it. So when you heard Amanda up here speaking, and Bill and Val and Sook, and they talk about, they're all at the national level, right? Those are big organizations, NRA, GOA, national level stuff. FOAC is Pennsylvania only. We're your Pennsylvania only Second Amendment organization. Why is that important to you? Well, I can't even write my speech to know what I'm going to talk to you about until I show up today and I hear what Sook has to say and I hear what Val have to say. I'm not going to repeat the same argument and the same points that they've already made with you, because then we're just beating the horse, right? We're kicking the same drum. So the idea that we're here to talk about is Article 1, Section 21 of Pennsylvania, is that a right of the citizen to bear arms in defense of themselves and the state shall not be questioned. Now, what sounds stronger than you? Shall not be infringed or shall not be questioned? Well, questioned by a long shot, right? Not only shall we not infringe upon it, we won't talk about it. And the problem here is we're talking about it. We're talking about it nonstop, in fact. You heard Val come up and talk about 1593, which is, they call it universal background checks. We call it mandatory firearms registry. And that is something that they were able to push through the House successfully. There's a lot of political chess that gets played there. And you've got these, the larger organizations, such as GOA and such as the NRA, that are engaged in the fight. And then you've got us at a state level. And where we sometimes bring a little bit of a different angle to this is when I go to the state House or I go to the leadership in the Senate, I'm coming to them not only as a state resident, but we're all born and raised here, right? And our families are all here and they all vote. So they understand that we have a very broad reach in Pennsylvania. So you'd be shocked how much influence a small organization can have in this state. And years ago, some of these organizations, we didn't get along very well. We maybe had different objectives where you had the state organization, you had your federal, your national organizations, and we maybe saw different values in how we approach things. Well, that's been changing in recent years. And the reason why it's changing is the courts have started to side with us, as Amanda said. The courts are starting to see that these are blatant violations. So what you end up having happen is, Sook and I talk, or Val and I talk, or Bill Backenberg, or Darren Goins, who's not here, the NRA reps, all these different organizations, and we've started to put our thoughts together, and we start to work together on these issues, and we've had a lot of success. So what I'm going to do is, instead of going over the same topics that they've discussed, talk about universal background checks for a minute. Why is that a threat to us? Why does that matter? Why would we be concerned? Because there are people out there on the gun rights side of the issue that believe universal background checks could be a good thing. What they're missing is the whole purpose of universal background checks is to create this gun registry. It's to make a statewide registry in Pennsylvania that records every firearm transaction that we have. And we know this because most of you are familiar with the record of sale here in Pennsylvania. When you buy a handgun, you fill out a record of sale. Why do they need to know where you work? Why is it that when we do a background check to pick up a firearm, why do they need to know where you work? Anybody have any ideas on that? Why would they care where you work? Is it necessary for your Second Amendment right? What do you think? So they can harass you, so they can find you to arrest you. That's the only reason. There's no other reason to know where you work. Now, I've been a cop for 30 years. I retired from law enforcement, and I do advocacy for the Second Amendment nonstop here in Pennsylvania. But does that strike anybody as kind of odd? Did you notice that on your license to carry form, they used to ask for 2 references to fill out your license to carry? Why do they need references? Does somebody else in your community get to decide if you get to exercise your Second Amendment right? Should they? It was illegal for them to ask for references for 30 years. They've never been allowed to ask that question. And yet most of you, when you filled out your license to carry, what did you do? You filled out those boxes because they told you had to. So we took that fight up a couple years ago, and we were able to change the form. Now when you go to renew your license to carry, the most they would give us is it says optional. We can't sue them if they ask for optional information, which is how that happened. The delayed in the background check system, when you tried to buy a firearm during COVID, you had, a 3 or 4 hour wait, maybe a 7 or 15 hour wait. Some shops were telling you to come back the next day. Well, guess what we had to do to stop that? What happened when Governor Wolf came out and during COVID shut down all the gun stores? Anybody remember that? Yeah, we had to file a lawsuit to get that reversed as well. And then the same man turned around a few weeks later and turned around and said, hey, you can carry on an expired license for up to 6 months. I'm doing that as a favor for you to help deal with COVID. Well, ironically, that was already our state law here. It was already the law that you could carry on an expired license to carry for 6 months. But what did you have? You had a governor stand up and do us a favor. And this is part of the problem. So our role as a state organization is to get those of you here in Pennsylvania engaged in the fight in Pennsylvania. We deal with our statutes and our statutes alone. We deal with our legislators and our legislators alone. And it makes a big difference because I can't go up on the national scale. That's not my role. My role is Pennsylvania only. My role is to make sure we reinforce with you the Article 1, Section 21 rights that you have here in Pennsylvania. And that becomes a very large topic for us. So anybody have any questions for me about state rights, about issues that are happening here in Pennsylvania? Because I'll tell you one thing right now that most of you don't know. When Val stood up here and said that we are this close to becoming New Jersey, New York, California, we're talking about 2 senators. Are you aware of that? Lisa Baker, your state senator here, is in that office because of my organization. She belongs there. We promoted her for that, and you folks voted for her, and you should. That's how we know that 1593 is dead in the Senate. She will not take that to the floor. It'll never make it out of committee. Because you have Second Amendment people that influence these legislators. They know that's what's keeping them in those offices. So it's important that you understand that. 1593, how could that be used against us? Well, if you have to transfer, this is a 4-step process. A lot of folks don't understand this. Gun registration is a 4-step process. The first is universal background checks. If I want to give my neighbor a shotgun to loan their kid to go hunting or sporting clay shooting, I can't do that anymore with universal background checks. I have to go to a dealer and I have to pay for that transaction to occur. Does that sound Second Amendment to you? I have to pay a dealer for the right to loan a firearm to my neighbor? This is where universal background checks start. The second step, another bill they just put out, 1891, it's called Modernizing Records of Firearm Sales. There's cops getting behind this. They think, oh, we're going to modernize records of firearm sales. What are records of firearm sales? What's that sound like to you? It's a registry. That's 100% what it is. We sued the state over it years ago, and we lost because our Supreme Court, 5 Democrats to 2 Republicans, voted that a record of every handgun sale is not a registry. Does that make sense to anybody? So we know politics got involved in that, right? And that's why when we're talking about the elections coming up for judges, who do we retain as judges? Who do we not retain? I would encourage you not to retain the 3 Democrat Supreme Court justices that are up for retention this year. We would speak against that because those folks felt that wasn't a registry. So if we have universal background checks where you have to do a background check to get a firearm, and then the next step is modernizing records of firearm sales, what are we doing? We're making it electronic, which means the information is instant. The next step will be prohibiting interfamily transactions. Right now, you can give a firearm from a grandparent to a parent to a child to a grandchild. That'll go out the door next. And then shortly after that will be a mandatory record of sale on every transfer, meaning long guns included. That creates a whole and 100% firearm registry in Pennsylvania. This is already aware. This already happened in several other states. So we know what's coming. So we have to fight this every step of the way. We can't give in on even just one portion of this. Does everybody follow me? Is that getting a little too in-depth on the state laws, right? Anybody have any questions for me about what's happening in the state, why we're at risk? We are 2 senators away from becoming California. Does anybody want that? No. There's a couple of young ladies outside that stopped and visited me this morning in our booth from California. And they said, boy, how nice you have it here. Pennsylvania is not the gun-free state everybody thinks it is. We have a lot of restrictions here that we need to get reversed. And that's where we talk to the Vals and the Sukes and the Amandas and the Bills, and we get everybody working on the same page to make that happen. So hopefully you can see why that would be important. Hopefully you understand why there's a need for a state organization, a group like us that comes in here. We're all grassroots. We're all volunteered. We have no paid employees. I actually travel the state teaching seminars, gun rights, concealed carry seminars for your state representatives, things of that. And we're all funded by folks like you. So if you get a moment, look us up. We're 2apa.org. That's 2apa.org. Make sure you join your state organizations, join your national organizations. Sometimes it's not even that $30 membership due. Our lawsuit against Bill Peduto in the city of Pittsburgh cost me $120,000. Do you think we paid that with our $30 membership fee? No. So we need these types of events. We come out, we do fundraising. Get involved, get engaged. If you have any questions, if you're worried about what's happening at the state, I will be out here for the rest of the afternoon. We're the last 10 on the right coming down the side. Make sure you stop out and visit. Make sure you get engaged in the fight. 2 or 3 years ago, I stood up here and I said, look, we've got a train. We've got a train fighting for the Second Amendment, and nothing's going to stop that train, but we need folks like you to get on it and give it some weight. So my name is Jim Stoker. I'm with FOAC. Thanks for your time.